Imagine this. You're sitting across from a man who seems completely out of your league. He's calm, magnetic, and completely unbothered by the fact that every woman in the room has noticed him. Yet somehow, he looks at you differently. Not like he's trying to win you over. Not like he's performing for your approval. He looks at you like he already knows something you don't. And that quiet confidence, it does something to you that you can't quite explain. What if I told you that this feeling, that pull, that inexplicable draw toward a certain kind of man, isn't random? What if I told you that what you're experiencing in those moments is actually rooted deep in female psychology, in the invisible emotional patterns that shape who we're drawn to, who we trust, and who we ultimately choose to love? Because here's the truth that most people, men and women alike, have never been taught. Attraction isn't logical. It was never meant to be. It operates beneath the surface of our conscious mind, in a place where feelings speak louder than facts and presence speaks louder than words. And if you've ever found yourself inexplicably drawn to someone who wasn't necessarily the most obvious choice, or if you've ever wondered why certain relationships felt electric, while others felt flat despite looking perfect on paper, I want you to know, you are not alone. This is one of the most common and quietly confusing experiences women carry. So I want to ask you something right now. Drop it in the comments below. Have you ever been drawn to someone and had absolutely no idea why? Or have you ever watched a relationship fade and felt like you couldn't explain what changed? Because your answer might just be the beginning of understanding something that will shift everything for you. And when you share, you're not just helping yourself. You're creating a conversation that helps every woman watching this feel a little less alone. I'm Mary Smith, host of Senior Mindful Living, and today we are going beneath the surface. We are going into the psychology of attraction, connection, and what actually moves us as women at the deepest emotional level. Not because understanding this gives someone power over us, but because understanding it gives us power over ourselves. The power to recognize what we're responding to. The power to choose consciously rather than react unconsciously. And the power to build relationships that are genuinely fulfilling rather than emotionally exhausting. Let's start with something that doesn't get talked about nearly enough: the craving for emotional depth and contrast. Most of us were raised to believe that the ideal partner is consistent, stable, and easy to read. And while consistency and stability are genuinely important in a healthy relationship, there is something else we crave that we often feel guilty admitting. We crave to feel something, not just comfort, not just safety. We crave to feel truly, deeply alive in the presence of another person. Psychologists have long studied the phenomenon of emotional contrast, the way our nervous systems respond not just to positive experiences, but to the unpredictability between emotional highs and lows. When someone makes us laugh, and then challenges us intellectually, and then surprises us with unexpected tenderness, our brain registers that as richness, as depth, as someone worth paying attention to. And here's where so many relationships quietly lose their spark, not because love disappears, but because the emotional landscape becomes too flat, too predictable, too safe in a way that slowly starts to feel like stagnation rather than security. Think about the relationships in your own life that have felt most alive. Not necessarily the easiest ones, but the ones where you felt most present, most engaged, most like yourself. I'd be willing to bet that those relationships had texture. They had moments of tension and resolution, moments of mystery and revelation, moments where you genuinely didn't know what was coming next, and that uncertainty kept you leaning in. There's a woman I'll call Diana, 63 years old, recently widowed after a long marriage that she described as deeply loving but emotionally quiet. When she began dating again 2 years later, she was surprised to find herself most drawn to a man who was warm but not effusive, thoughtful but not easily read. He would engage her fully in conversation one evening and then send a brief, unhurried message the next day, with no explanation, no apology, just a quiet confidence in the rhythm he was setting. Diana told me, I found myself thinking about him constantly, not because he was withholding, but because he made me feel like there was always more to discover. That is emotional contrast at work. And becoming aware of it changes how you relate to your own patterns of attraction. So here is a practical exercise I want you to try this week. Think about a relationship in your life, romantic or otherwise, where you feel emotionally flat or disengaged. Now ask yourself honestly, has the interaction between you become entirely predictable? Is there any space left for surprise, for genuine curiosity, for not knowing exactly what the other person will say or do? Because sometimes the answer to reigniting connection isn't doing more. It's introducing a little thoughtful unpredictability. Try something different. Share an opinion you'd normally keep to yourself. Suggest an experience that's outside both of your comfort zones. Ask a question that goes deeper than your usual conversation. Emotional contrast isn't about drama. It's about depth. And depth is what keeps love alive. Now, let's talk about something that I believe is one of the most misunderstood aspects of female psychology: our relationship with boundaries. And I don't mean other people's boundaries with us. I mean our own. Here is a truth that can be genuinely uncomfortable to sit with. Many of us, particularly women who were raised to be accommodating, nurturing, and self-sacrificing, have a complicated relationship with men who have strong, clear, unshakable boundaries. On the surface, we might tell ourselves we want a partner who is flexible, available, and endlessly giving. But if we're honest, truly honest, there is something deeply compelling about a person who knows exactly who they are and what they will and will not tolerate. Not because they're rigid, not because they're cold, but because that kind of groundedness signals something our nervous system reads as safe, as trustworthy, as real. Research in attachment theory consistently shows that adults who demonstrate secure attachment, who are warm and engaged but not anxiously available, who can hold their own emotional boundaries without shutting others out, are the most consistently attractive long-term partners. Not because they play games, but because their inner security creates an energetic field of stability that we are literally wired to be drawn toward. Dr. Sue Johnson, founder of emotionally focused therapy, has spent decades studying what makes love last. And one of her central findings is this: we don't fall for people who are endlessly accommodating. We fall for people who are genuinely present. And you cannot be genuinely present if you have given yourself away entirely. Let me give you a real-life example that I think will resonate with many of you. There's a woman I worked with, I'll call her Patricia, 67 years old, who had spent most of her adult life in relationships where she bent herself into a pretzel trying to keep the peace. She accommodated, apologized, made herself smaller. And the men she chose often took that accommodation for granted. When she finally began setting genuine limits, saying no when she meant no, declining invitations that drained her, communicating her needs without apologizing for having them, something shifted. The man she was seeing at the time, instead of pulling away as she feared, became more engaged, more respectful, more genuinely interested. He later told her, "When you started standing in your own truth, I realized I was with someone I could actually trust." That is the power of honest, grounded limits. They don't push people away. They attract the right ones. Here is a practical exercise for you. This week, I want you to identify one area of your life or one relationship where you consistently override your own needs to keep someone else comfortable. Just one, and I want you to practice holding that boundary, not aggressively, not defensively, but calmly and clearly. Notice what shifts. Notice how it feels in your body to hold your ground, and notice how the people around you respond. Because often, the relationships that are worth keeping will deepen, and the ones that can't survive your authenticity were never truly serving you to begin with. Drop a comment and tell me, what's one boundary you've been afraid to hold? You might be surprised by how many women watching this are living the exact same question. Now, I want to take us somewhere that feels perhaps counterintuitive. We're going to talk about uncertainty and why a certain kind of not knowing can actually be the soil in which genuine attraction grows. Think about the last story that genuinely gripped you. A novel you couldn't put down, a television series that kept you awake past midnight, a conversation that you replayed in your mind for days afterward. What made it grip you? It wasn't the resolution. It was the tension before the resolution. It was the not knowing. Our brains are wired, quite literally, to be activated by uncertainty. Neuroscientists have found that the dopamine system, the neural network responsible for motivation, anticipation, and desire, is more powerfully activated by variable rewards than by predictable ones. This is why a text that arrives sometimes quickly and sometimes hours later can feel more intoxicating than one that arrives like clockwork. Our brains lean toward the unknown. Not because we enjoy anxiety, but because the unknown signals possibility. Now I want to be very clear here, because this is important. There is a profound difference between the kind of uncertainty that is healthy and the kind that is harmful. Healthy uncertainty feels like mystery, like depth, like there is more to discover about someone who is already clearly kind, present, and genuine. Harmful uncertainty feels like instability, like you never know if someone is safe, like love is being used as leverage. One opens us. The other closes us down and over time causes genuine psychological harm. The women who find themselves caught in cycles of anxious attachment, of chasing emotional breadcrumbs, of mistaking anxiety for passion, are often responding to harmful uncertainty and calling it love. Part of the work of mature psychology is learning to tell the difference between the two, to honor the pull toward depth and mystery while refusing to mistake chaos for chemistry. And this brings us to something I think is at the very heart of what we're exploring today. The question of leadership, not dominance, not control, but genuine, grounded, purposeful leadership. And before any assumptions form, I want to be clear. This applies equally to women as it does to the men in our lives, because the truth is, we are all drawn to people who know where they are going, who move through the world with intention, who make decisions from a place of inner clarity rather than external validation. There is a reason that purposeful people, whether that purpose manifests in creative work, in community service, in business, in parenting, in spiritual practice, seem to generate a natural kind of magnetism. It's because purpose is attractive. Vision is attractive. Knowing who you are and where you are pointed is one of the most compelling things a human being can embody. Think about the women in your life who you most admire. I'd be willing to bet that they share this quality. Not that they have everything figured out, not that they never struggle or doubt. But that beneath the uncertainty, there is a thread of intention, a sense of self that doesn't entirely depend on external circumstances or other people's approval. That quality, that inner groundedness, is what leadership actually looks like from the inside. And it is what makes someone, man or woman, genuinely irresistible over the long term. Here is the final and perhaps most liberating insight I want to leave you with today, and it is this. The most deeply attractive quality any person can cultivate has nothing to do with appearance, status, or wealth. It is the quality of being someone who does not need you to complete them, who invites you into a life that is already rich with meaning, already full of purpose, already overflowing with genuine engagement. Think about the difference between someone who needs you to be their everything and someone who chooses you while already being whole. The first can feel flattering at first, but over time it becomes suffocating because it places the entire weight of another person's happiness on your shoulders. The second feels like freedom, like being genuinely seen and genuinely chosen, like love that is given from abundance rather than taken from scarcity. A woman named Carol, 71, described meeting her current partner this way. She said, "He had a full life before me. He had friendships, passions, a morning routine he loved, places he went alone that mattered to him. And when he invited me into that life, I felt like I was being welcomed into something real. Not asked to become someone's reason for living. That is the kind of love that is sustainable. That is the kind of attraction that deepens over time rather than burning out." So here is your invitation, and I mean this with all the warmth and directness I have. Before you look for someone who makes your life feel complete, do the work of making your own life feel complete. Not because you have to earn love, Not because you need to become perfect before you deserve connection, but because the fullest, most alive version of you is also the most magnetic version of you. Invest in your friendships. Pursue what genuinely lights you up. Set limits that reflect your real values. Move through the world with intention. Build something you're proud of, whether that's a garden, a creative practice, a community, a body of knowledge, a life fully and unapologetically lived. And then, from that place, invite someone in. Because the right person won't want to be your whole world. They'll want to be part of one that's already extraordinary. If today's conversation stirred something in you, I would love for you to share it. Leave a comment below. Tell me which of these insights hit home. Tell me what you're working on, what you're healing, what you're curious about. This community grows richer every time one of you speaks honestly, and I read every single comment. If this video brought you value, please share it with a woman in your life who might need to hear it. Subscribe to Senior Mindful Living so you never miss a conversation like this one. And come back next time, because what we're going to explore next might just be the most important piece of this entire puzzle. Stay grounded, stay curious, and remember, the most powerful thing you will ever do is become fully, unapologetically yourself. I'll see you in the next one.